Hey, everybody. Happy Friday the 13th. Very excited for this. This is not going to be unlucky, you guys. This is going to be the luckiest episode ever because I am here with the beautiful Claudia, and we are going to be talking about something that a lot of us are passionate about, which is multicultural communities. And we're going to be talking about the richness and we're going to be talking about the challenges. And so we really want you guys to get into the conversation with us today because what are we here to do? We're here to create community through conversation. And that takes everybody getting into the conversation. Hello, Lisa. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Guys, feel free to pop in your hello and everything into the comments and your thoughts and your questions and your insights and everything as we go through this conversation today because there really is so much richness that's available when we get into conversation with people who are different from ourselves, but it can also be challenging. And there's a lot of reasons why people don't do that in the first place. So we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of different things today. Before we get too far into it, Claudia, would you like to introduce us to who you are and why you're so passionate about this conversation?
Hi, Tracy. Hi, all. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to be here talking about such a interesting and I would say that very important topic, right? When we see the world and all the challenges we are going through, and also the possibilities we have to build the new and disruptive things that might lead us to more progress and sustainability. I think that has to be seen as a way to connect people with different views. So I'm Claudia. I lived in the US for some time. I'm a communications professional and I've been also dealing with lots of human rights projects. So I've lived in Bosnia, I worked for the UN, for the Brazilian government and for enterprises and with human rights projects and with communications and engagement and with cultural transformation, digital transformation, kind of you name it, right? And what really struck me about all I've been doing throughout my life, it's how much how much richness is within every single person you meet. But at the same time, it's not so simple. I'm a communication professional. I say, okay, so let's talk about communications. Let's, take a look at the text. Let's look at the campaign, the video, whatever. But that's not about it. That's not about it. When you really touch people, when you really want to get to know to people, it's a different kind of communications we're talking about. So I'm really interested in people that think different from me, and sometimes I want a little bit of comfort. So I choose to talk to people that think the same as me. But I'm always aware that life is much bigger than what my eyes can see. So that's a great opportunity to be here. And let's have a chat.
This is so awesome because I was having this conversation with someone else recently about the concept of belonging. So, belonging is something that is very near and dear to me. And when we start looking at having conversations with people who are maybe quite different than you and have different perspectives, then by nature, those types of conversations don't necessarily create that belonging that we crave. And you brought this up in your introduction, is like, how do we create this balance where we have the opportunities to learn and grow from people with different perspectives, but we also have that safe space that we can go back to and feel that sense of belonging, that sense of we're not the only ones thinking this.
I think you have to be curious and open. And I think also have to grow in you a mindset that even though we are different, somehow we are the same at some level,
Mhm.
right? So this is something that I was an exchange student when I lived in the US, and was the first time that I had the opportunity to get to know people from different kinds of the world, so from Turkey, from India, from Japan, and this was a way back, right? So at the time there was no internet or things like this, so was not so simple to really get into different cultures. So it was the really first time that I met people that thought so differently from me. And not only that, their cultural background was very different from mine. So that goes even to the place of women that expect to have in society and things like this. So, but I think that what made me always feel as I belonged was two main things. One of them was to do things together, to have some kind of plan and actions that we do together. So it doesn't have much to do with who we are in a sense, but what we are building together, what we want to do together and bring to the world. So that help us to focus on something concrete, and the differences that will come along will be managed if you understand that people feel the same way as you do. So it doesn't matter if this society or that society, women are perceived differently, but women and as men have dreams and have pain and have happiness. So, in that sense, human emotions and human needs are much similar. And so I think there are two things, Tracy. I think it's to be curious, three things I would say. To be curious, to understand that at human level, we have same needs and things like this. And also to have like a common goal that is concrete that you want to bring out to the world, and these people may help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I always find, and I felt like this when we had our first conversation too, Claudia, is that, oh, we're like on the same road. Like we're trying to achieve similar things. And once you find those types of people, it's almost like, oh, I feel like we've been friends forever because we have all of these important human values in common. And that doesn't mean that we have everything in common by any means, but we have something important in common.
Yeah.
And I think that I agree with you that there's so many opportunities to find where we have things in common. And I don't like to use the word sameness because I'm not about everybody like being the same or trying to be the same. But when we can find those things that we have in common and we can find then the beauty in how we're different because we have these things in common, and how much more can we contribute to the overarching goal because we have different thoughts, because we have different experiences, because we have different challenges we've overcome, because we have different perspectives, and how that can add to the human experience. I think it's such a beautiful thing.
You know what? This some thought came to my mind. When I was a teenager, I want to be an actress, right? And I love like to read books and and theater stuff like this. And one of the things that I loved about all of it was the idea that I had that I could live 1,000 lives in one. So I always thought, if I can play like a Roman soldier, or whatever, I don't know why Roman soldier came to my mind, but anyways, I can kind of deep have a deep dive in history and how things went. So I could learn a lot, and somehow by playing that role, for some moments, I become that person, right? So it for me thought that was so an interesting idea, like to be able to live different lives and being myself still. It's like that in a way, it didn't come out because I'm not such a good actress anyway, but but I can have different lives in a way. I can have that sense by connecting to different people.
Mhm.
So I really enjoy like understanding the rationale, the reasoning, why people think like that. So and I think another thing that it's important when you connect with people for different cultures is that you really have a sense of belonging to yourself.
Right.
Because sometimes when we look for belonging in others, we get lost and we project a lot in others our inner challenges, our insecurities. So, one thing that diversity is something that really interests me, and not only cultural diversity, but linguistic diversity that
Mm.
is connected to culture in a way. Because the words we use, or for instance, I'm a Latin person, right? So Portuguese, Italian, Spanish. So I speak like that, right? So when I get excited, my voice goes up and I get red in my cheeks and all. So I'm not nervous. I'm not angry. Not at all. I'm just excited about something. But the thing is, if you're not curious, if you're not cultural aware of differences, uh, you can see that, and you can infer, you can use your sense of values and your symbols to interpret others, and you can project lots of insecurities on the other person, but the other person is just being herself or himself.
Mhm.
So I think that's also important. Like, before looking for belonging in others, belong to yourself, and be curious around the world, understanding that people that come from different journeys, they express themselves, they differently,
Mhm.
and that's good, and that's challenging at the same time, especially if you're not self-aware, if you don't develop some time to get to know you better.
Mhm. I think this is really interesting because I know a lot of people who love connecting with other people. And it's really interesting to see the amount of effort and energy that people put in, even to like listening and learning about other cultures, but then not doing that for themselves and not seeing that connection, that belonging with self, right? And you can't get that from someone else, right? Like you can be very curious and you can learn about a lot of people, and that still doesn't influence your ability to belong with you and find your own space. So I think that's a really important piece because in this show we talk a lot about connections and community, and a lot so often when people think about that, their predefined definition of that is the people outside of you, right? So the people around you in a community, your street or your workplace, right? The other people. But there's so much of you that comes into play with all of those things. And even when you look deep down, right? Like, what are the things you're curious about? Usually you're curious about the things that you have a value attached to. Otherwise, you're very indifferent. Right? And so I think that's an important piece of the conversation that we don't talk about enough when we talk about belonging.
Yeah, I think that I'm 53. I know that I look young. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, and I think that's something that I learned into life is when I feel more in peace with myself, when I better understand what tickles me, what drives me mad or irritates me, I'm a better community member. I'm a better community leader because I'm able to remain present, whatever it comes. And that enables me to have a sense of wonder and to identify opportunities in challenges or challenges in opportunities, but without blaming anybody, without blaming myself, just being aware of things as they are, because I'm more present, because I'm not really trying to win over, or battle, or I'm just trying to be part of something and help that something to flow smoothly so that I can get my needs respected and the results I need achieved. But at the same time, I can support others to do so as well. And we collectively build something and have greater results, individual and group results. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I I think it makes sense. And I also think that there's when we're talking about achieving things as a group, it's a very underlying it's usually not part of the conversation at all, right? It's just is like this underlying thing that is in every moment contributing to the feeling of team and the building of community and the outcomes that we're generating, but we don't talk about it enough. We just are like, no, that's fine, we'll just let our individual team members deal with an undefined personal belongingness. Those words are terrible, but I think you guys understand what I'm trying to say, is that there's this underlying thing and we don't talk about it as part of trying to achieve the goals. And if we don't address it, we're really not doing everything we could to achieve those goals at the end of the day, be it a like corporate sales revenue or a feeling in a event that you're hosting. If you don't talk about the underlying things, you can't maximize the output.
Yeah, and I think also you don't do the best you can to enable communities to strengthen. Because, for instance, when we met, right, there's a connection. So we keep talking for hours, I think, if I just. But the thing is, it's not always like that. Exactly, because people are different, and sometimes we project on them things that we feel inside, or sometimes we're not curious about what they bring us, or sometimes our differences are so, we feel that we're so apart that there's nothing we will be able to connect with when we are together. So in those situations, having a clear goal, it helps people to overcome their personal barriers in being available to connect in a community, in a team. So I think, a community leader, a facilitator, it's important to have different strategies. So, okay, a group can become a community by individuals that somehow feel affinity one another. Uh, Sometimes you have a group of people that are very curious with differences. Well, that's perfect, because they'll be curious and talking in all of this. But sometimes you have people that are very close in their own words. So this will not naturally become a community or a team. We'll be a bunch of people together. So if you use goals strategically, actions, plans, this will help people to talk about concrete things, not focus on their personal difference. And as they start doing things together and have a sense of achievement and celebrate together, the personal barriers, the personal differences will just become interest. But let me know more about you. But because what interesting, you brought that idea, was so important for us to achieve that goal. Why did you come up with that idea? So, and this help people to connect. So I think it's important to use goals, because sometimes we need them and we have to achieve them, but also strategically as a way to engage people so that they become more curious one another and celebrate the differences, because the differences are essential always to achieve anything in life.
Absolutely. And I think that this is, I'm a big believer in celebration and what we choose and take the opportunity to celebrate is something that always, the word that you used, Claudia, was strengthen, right? And I think this is it's something, again, that I don't think you would show up with anybody in any space, in any type of community, and be like, here's like, you're actively trying to not strengthen your community today, right? People would be like, no, well, of course not. But we also don't have that specific intention. We create it, but we don't continually explore what strengthens that. And the thing that helps us continually explore is are those celebrations, the differences in people, right? And being able to continually build on the thing you have, and not say like, hey, okay, I created this box, I created the marketing department, and now we're just gonna sit on that. Right? Like, it's done. We've done the work, we've created the space, that's it. And that's not how we build an actual community of people where people feel like a community. We need those activities that strengthen. We need to be able to celebrate those goals. And I'm just thinking about this too. I don't know why I think of this. I work for a software development company. And so a lot of the developers and I, with my sales and marketing background, had very little in common as how we show up and greet the world and those types of things. But I remember having this one conversation with a young, he was with the company for like a very short amount of time. He sat in the development room. I knew very little about him. And for whatever reason, we were talking about roller coasters. And I have blacked out on roller coasters. So I tend to not ride roller coasters because I'm afraid of blacking out, not afraid of the roller coaster. And he was like, oh, I black out on roller coasters as well. And I was like, this is the most random thing to build a connection on. But that's the thing I will always remember about him. And it gives me something to build on. And so you just never really know where those connections are going to come. But when you create the space to intentionally give people opportunities to build those connections, I think there's a higher likelihood that you have from turning a team or a group or any of those other words into an actual community of people.
You know what, Tracy? When I worked for the UN, we had those events and all of this, and trainings and workshops and meetings, whatever. And then we had like the coffee breaks, right? And in Brazil, coffee is something, right? Something important. So having coffee and talking and all of this was important. So when we planned the event, we would always leave not just 5 minutes so you have like a bio break, whatever. You'd really plan like 30 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes for a coffee break so people could just move and talk freely and network, whatever, or connect. And what happened when I worked for when we could not use the budget of the projects to pay for coffee breaks because it was perceived as a waste of resources. But you see, that's the thing. Like when you're dealing with people, right? I think that you have to see things from different lenses. So yes, you have a need to talk about business. So let's talk about we came here to talk about and things like this. But at the same time, and different kind of connections are being made and perceptions are being made, and you have to nurture different ways of connection. And so this, when we were not able to pay for coffee breaks anymore, was bad, because people would not just be able to talk like this and find out, oh my goodness, you have this. I had same thing happen to me. And this, when people talk about personal lives, whatever, and find connections, it's amazing what happens when they go back to the meeting room. It's a different meeting. So it was a difficult conversation. It's not so difficult anymore because people are willing to be more open to those people they have connected in different levels. So sometimes if I'm listening to you, I barely know you, just about business, okay. But if I know that, I don't know, you like soccer, you like coffee as well. So when we are talking, I'm more open to listening to you. And this is important.
Yeah. And I think what that makes me think of too is like realizing when people are having a human experience, right? I remember this one scenario and I was VP of marketing at the time. The VP of sales was just sitting in his office and he looked like so stressed out. And you're like, well, sales, you never really know, right? What could be happening in there? Um, but like I went in and talked to him and he was waiting for a phone call from his wife to find out whether or not she had cancer.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, this just changes how I feel about this gentleman today, right? Like he needs some space for like I can't imagine what that would be like sitting and waiting at the office for that call, right? Like if I was your boss, I probably would have told you to just go home and be with your wife until she got the call, and then we could talk about it, right? Like, there's so many things. It just reminds me of what you said about like the coffee breaks, right? Like, we're kind of in business. There's a lot of times where we create, I call them golden handcuffs, where we're like, well, we can't, no, we can't spend money on that. We can't do that, right? Like, people need to work between 9 and 5. And you're like, well, okay. Like, I can see a lot of reasons why I understand why we have that in place, but there's people having a people experience here, and that doesn't it doesn't work. It just doesn't fit.
Especially, I think that you think, Tracy, in business and the markets today, because if you're just like in the old days in 1920s, maybe, just go there and you are like a robot. But the thing is, if you want to create and innovate, you know the repertoire, I don't know if that's the word in English, that you build inside with different ideas, different thoughts, a soap opera that I've seen, a movie, a song. Somehow when I'm dealing with a business challenge, all of this connects and enables me to be more creative. So if you want people to work from 9 to 5, and just look at like in a notebook or whatever, how will they be innovative? It's impossible because you don't have oxygen. You don't breathe different air. So you're gonna be what you always are. You're gonna see what you always see, right? So I think that when you allow people to see different things, to talk to different people, you also are nurturing their capacity to innovate. And for that, I think, like for me, Tracy, the way that we learn is through interactions. So we can learn book and stuff like this, but really learn and really apply what we learn is through other people. Other people help us to know what we need to learn or unlearn. So when you think about cultural in communities and different cultural backgrounds, for instance, I worked in Brazil. Brazil is a large country, so I will spend some months working in the Northeast in the different culture over there. And it's interesting because I'm from São Paulo, and São Paulo would be like the New York City of Brazil. So we are stressed out. No, let's not have lunch now because I don't have time. Let's not stop. Let's not have coffee. Let's not talk. Let's work, 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 right? And the thing is, when I spent that time in a project in the Northeast, there are beautiful beaches and all of this. So it's different way of dealing with things. And at first I thought, my goodness, those people are all lazy, right? We need to, it's like this. You start being judgmental, right? But the thing is, we got all the results we needed. They are very creative and they work differently. They count on people. They are not just like things, just, they have different timings in things like this, but doesn't mean that they are not committed. So I learned a lot from them. And I learned a lot from them to value the human dimension of humans.
Absolutely. And this is, I just, this is why I even have this show. Right? So we can start to see how new perspectives come from conversation, from listening, from trying on ideas that you never would have thought of because you have a different set of experience and expertise. And that's not that yours is bad or someone else's is better. It's just that someone else will always think differently than me, and that is exciting to me. It gives me an opportunity to like challenge what I know. And again, I'm with you on this, like the innovation and creativity specifically, right? Because how can I ever think of a new idea if I'm only ever exploring what I already know? And it just is, I can't. I don't even know how you come up with unique ideas that way because you're only ever using what you know. And so, one of the things I'd really like to talk about today, and if you guys have questions too, like please put them in the chat. But one of the things that I have experienced in conversations, which were the greatest opportunities for me to grow, and I didn't always realize this, but I realize it now, is when I feel uncomfortable, it's usually the greatest opportunity for me to learn something new that I have not experienced before. I feel like there's a lot of environments that are focused on keeping people comfortable. So we want people to come here. We want them to have conversation. So we need everything to be as comfortable as possible. But if we do that, we're maybe addressing one of the challenges of multicultural communities, but we're also really eliminating opportunities to take advantage of that richness. So is that something that you see as well? And in your work, have you seen any great things that people have done to kind of invite in that level of discomfort?
Wow, that's perfect. Your point is perfect, right? And actually, that's why the indicator of engagement is not satisfaction, right? So you cannot, if you're measuring the results of what you're doing with people by their satisfaction, that's not a good idea, right? You should measure how engaged they are. And sometimes people are engaged because they feel this discomfort and they want to learn something, right? So, and that's what I was mentioning about the importance of self awareness, because sometimes you have to hold space and silence so that people can come up and say things. And I think this has to do with the way you deal with conflict. And for me, Trace, I think that we have two very important hampers of real communities, which is people have to be happy all the time. Positivity, right? Toxic positivity. So if you bring a problem, oh, you can, don't, right? So you have to be happy. You have to be, always out a bit, right? And things like this. And another thing is, and they are connected, is we cannot have conflicts. Conflicts will destroy the team and the trust. Conflicts will destroy community. That's a whole wrong way of seeing conflicts, right? Conflicts are opportunity to strengthening bonds, to clarify things that are underlying and are destroying the possibility of doing things that should be done, because nobody brings to the table the problems, right? So I think there are environments that are conflict free, let's put it that way, and it's clear that people cannot raise concerns. So I think that the experiences, you asked me if I have seen any best practice in that sense. I think that all the best practice I've seen, they have different shapes and forms, but all of them, there's one thing that it's common to all of them, which is somebody role playing the person that brings conflict, that brings negative aspects of things, you know, that hold silence. It's okay, and so it becomes like a facilitator for people to show up as they also feel. And sometimes, in that sense, sometimes I think it's important to tell people, I'm not good today, I don't feel good today. So right now, I don't want to be challenged. So I don't want to have this difficult conversation right now because I'll probably not react the way I would like to react. I'll probably will perceive your words as an attack. So it's important to have that kind of self-awareness so that you kind of, postpone difficult conversations if possible. You are aware of your internal climate. Are you in summer, spring, winter, or autumn? Because they have different ways, right? So internally, what's your season today? So don't go to the beach if you internally you're in winter. You'll not have fun, right? Don't force yourself to be in spring, which is to make connections and really listen and to date, whatever. If you feel like on autumn, you feel like, I just don't do that. Don't force yourself. Don't put yourself in that place, right? And if you do that, and if you even go further and you tell people why you're postponing things, why you're canceling things, you know, it's you educate people as you move along. So people see you and they see it's okay not to be upbeat all the time, and more importantly, it's okay to really understand yourself, understand the other, and respect each other.
Yeah, I think that comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning about kind of understanding your own personal level of belonging, right? Because there's so much self-awareness that goes into these things, and especially when you're in a leadership role, being able to set that, like to lead by example and show people that, like, hey, I understand that people are in different seasons on different days, and that I don't get to dictate what season you're in. But I can understand what season you're in, and we can optimize what we're doing
Exactly.
today around that season. Because one of the things that drives me nuts in many corporate working environments is the false sense of urgency that
That's
gets
it.
associated with a lot of things, right? Like, we need to do this right this minute. And I think back on, like, I don't think there was anything ever that I had to do that really had to be done right now. I mean, like, if you have a client who's having an issue and they're on the phone with you
Hmm.
right now, then yeah, sure, be on the phone with them right now. But I mean, again, my background is marketing, right? Marketing is never urgent, ever. And we create this sense of, like, I gotta do it now. I gotta have this post. I gotta have a blog post. I gotta do it. And like, do I really want somebody who's feeling like very winter to write a blog post today when they need to be feeling spring, right? No. Or could I put some effort into maybe creating a space or creating a conversation that would give them the opportunity to transition into a different season? Yeah, that's probably a better use of time. But all of these, it's funny how like all of these things are so interconnected, right? Because then I just come back to that curiosity. And if I, as a person, can show up and be curious today and find out, like, huh, this person just really seems to not want to write this blog post. What's up with that? Maybe it's because they aren't feeling like they're the expert in that and really shouldn't write about it. Maybe they're feeling like they've got something going on at home and they just can't distract their mind for long enough to write a blog post, right? And being able to invite people into a conversation because you legitimately care or you're legitimately curious about what's going on for them is just a beautiful reminder that someone in the world cares about them enough to ask.
You know what, Tracy? And this sometimes it's all that it takes for people to go from winter to spring or summer, whatever. It's all that it takes. And I completely agree with you that very few things in life are really crisis and urgent. And my experience in communications and dealing with reputational crisis, when you have a crisis, somehow all of this that we are taught, people are engaged. So even if they are going through difficult stuff, somehow they put on the back burner and they are willing the presence because all of us know what an urgent matter, really urgent matter is. So we can recognize there is something here. And I think that the majority of people will show up to the need of being present in a really urgent matter in a crisis. So, but I completely agree with you. So sometimes what's urgent, what is crisis, it's not that. It's just a matter of pressure. And I think people react badly when they feel that there is no real purpose or sense. It's just a matter of putting pressure for the sake of putting pressure, and this is kind of disengage people because that means that we haven't really built a bond. So so we're not a team. You can pretend we are, but we're not, because you're just acting for pretending you have a crisis to put pressure on me to make me move. uh, that is you treating me like a kid, like a child, right? And I think that people really react badly to that. But at the same time, if they say, look, what's going on. And I think that it's curiosity. And also, Trace, I think it's what I call intellectual integrity. So I want to know what's going on. I don't want to pretend. So, I don't want to like, okay, something's bad. I talked to Trace. I felt that she doesn't want to do it, but it's okay. I'm going to but, it's not just a matter of curiosity. It's a matter of integrity and being responsible to bring out the results, whatever. Because in order for me to deal with life in a better way possible, I have to deal with life as it presents, right? So if I have like a feeling that something's off or something, and I completely choose to ignore it, so how responsible am I being to myself, to the company, to my team members? You know, uh, so I think that that's really important. Like when you are dealing with differences, whatever it is, or challenges, it's really important to have like to maintain this commitment to go to really learn what's going on.
Hmm.
And you always have 5 minutes, Tracy.
I agree. I tell people, actually, I always tell everybody they have 10 minutes. Everybody has 10 minutes. You can find 10 minutes if you're looking for 10 minutes. I can find 10 minutes to scroll on social media. I can find 10 minutes to talk to somebody about something that is off. And I think one of the things that I think is really important too is that intention, right? Because I think there's a lot of times too, if somebody seems to be having a difficult time, and it's mental health awareness week, right? So it's a good time to be talking about this. Sometimes it can seem a little scary, daunting to start those conversations when you're really, or one, when you don't have a lot of practice. You're not sure what the outcome is going to be, and so a lot of times we just defer, right? We just don't, because we're not sure how it's going to go. But in almost every scenario, and I'm the first to admit, right, like I've not gotten it right in a lot of scenarios, starting conversations or trying to encourage people to talk. I haven't gotten it right all the time. Nobody's perfect, right? But what I do have is an intention of figuring out how to help that person. And so sometimes what I say or sometimes what I do doesn't have the impact that I'm hoping for. And that's another opportunity to learn. But when you show up with that intention, it's important to notice when your impact isn't aligned with your intention, but that intention does carry weight, right? People see that. People are like, wow, that person's really interested in figuring out what's going on for me. And they totally bungled how to actually help me, but they are interested, right? And being able to, this comes back to that relationship with yourself, right? To take the chance on yourself, to be able to forgive yourself when the impact doesn't do exactly what you were trying to do, but you were brave enough to have the conversation when a lot of other people won't do it. I think it's important to, another thing that we can celebrate about ourselves and our investment in building a community, because it would be like if someone said, like, Tracy, go build a house right now. Like, I know some things about building a house, but not enough to actually build a house. So if I had to go and build one, I could do some things. I could, I don't know, I didn't, where would I get cement? I don't know, but I could pour a cement foundation, and then I could do some framing, and then I probably would run out of nails somewhere along the line and screw something up, right? But I have enough to know that I can try. But what if I just asked some more people to come along with me, right? As long as we always think that we're the ones that have to do everything, carry all the load in a conversation, then it's like building your own house. But when we remember that through our conversations, we have the ability to grow our community and that team that is able to help us and be like, well, hey, you actually need some plumbing. And we're like, oh, great. You're the expert at plumbing. Awesome. come and help me with this because I'm not the expert at it. This is what community is. This is what conversation is. It's just an opportunity for everybody to participate. And so when we give everybody the opportunity to participate, we like that phrase, a high tide raises all boats, right? We all get to rise together. And I think that is awesome. So why would we not?
When I was listening to you, two things came to my mind. I think one, it's important when you have like a long-term perspective, right? Because one thing is you come from marketing. So one thing is if I'm gonna sell you like one time, and one time I'm gonna sell you one thing, I'm never gonna see you again. So the way probably I behave with you, the openness I will have with you, it's different because it's more transactional. I want you to buy my mobile phone. I'm not gonna see you anymore, right? Maybe I will if somehow some kind of connection happens, but that's not the main point. But when you are really like working in a group or building communities, you have to see this for the long run. So, for instance, as you're mentioning, this person is having a hard time. You approach the person, it doesn't, happen as you want it to happen. The person reacts badly, but this was one point in time. You have other opportunities to connect. So and the fact that you really showed real intention and real care for this person will pay off in the long run. And you have other times. So having this in mind is important. And also, in terms of talking to other people and asking for help, for instance, if you see a person that is having a hard time, you come from marketing. So you have in a community somebody that has a psychological background. So maybe, and you trust that person. Say, look, I'm concerned about John. He seems off. I don't know how to approach him. Can you give me some ideas? Or maybe it's not me the best person to approach him, but maybe you should approach him. Who should approach? Maybe a friend. Maybe should. So approaching directly a person. It's not the only way of showing care or caring, and giving that person a chance to ask for help. But if you have a community and you see yourself in a community and you value differences, you value that you are limited in that knowledge, but somebody in your community may know more than you in that specific point. And then, you can ask for help on how to better help, right?
Absolutely. There's always, this is the benefit of a community, right? And even if it's just like your friend or your spouse, and you're like, oh, there's this guy at work, and I feel like he's disconnected, and I would like to try and talk to him. Like, you don't know, someone has an experience and something that worked for them that they might be able to share, which doesn't mean you have to do that, but it's an opportunity for you to learn and explore what you would do. There's, again, coming back to that, just the immense richness in a different perspective. Or even, I don't know about you guys, but I find this all the time. I'll be like asking myself a question in my head over and over, and I can't figure it out. And then as soon as I say it out loud to someone else, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I got it. I figured it out, because your brain actually processes information differently when you're thinking versus when you're speaking and like looking for responses. And so it's this the benefit of talking it out. I always talk about talking it out, and it's one of my favorite things to do. I do want to come back to something that Lisa shared up here about how it's hard to build bonds when you feel people don't care. And I think that this is, I read in a LinkedIn post about this the other day as well, about how like there's a lot of things that we can teach leaders, right? We can teach them negotiation skills, and we can teach them management, and we can teach them lots of things. And you either care or you don't care. Right. And I don't, for those of you who know me, I'm all about authenticity, right? I don't believe in pretending to care when you don't care. It's not about doing that, because that's even worse, right? Don't pretend to care if you don't, because just ignoring it would be better. People will know that that's true. You don't care, and therefore you ignore their problem. Okay, this is the fact. But it's not about trying to care about things that you don't care about. It's just about opening up and creating a space for a conversation when there is a thing you care about. And so if you are that person who is like, oh man, yeah, John seems really sad and I wish I could talk to him about it. Okay, might even be just that, right? Like, hey, just feel like I wanted to chat with you today. Do you want to go for coffee?
Yeah, for coffee break. But you know what? I think also, Trace, it's important that we understand that the group dynamics in a group, there is always
Mhm.
more than one group, right?
True.
And people play different roles in that group. And, after a while, you are able to understand who is who in that group, right? And you kind of learn what to expect from that relationship and from that person. And I think it's also like it's important to have that in mind, because sometimes people that don't care for nobody, just is there with a focus, but this person might play a role in that group for some reason, but it's not the caring role,
Mhm.
right? And that's okay. Or
Yep.
sometimes a person is the quiet one and it's always will be quiet, right? And it's not that he's sad or not sad, or it's just a matter of the person, how the person is. That person chooses to be quiet in a group dynamics. So sometimes also I think we should, like, comes back to self-awareness. Am I too worried about that person not belonging? I'm too worried about belong and enable belongment, that maybe I'm being pushing too much, not really respecting that person identity, the person, the way that the person chooses to connect or to show up. So I think that's important, because somehow when you show to people that you care, you show to people that you care in small little things. And people observe us and observe one another all the time. Sometimes we observe others much more than we observe ourselves, right? When so the fact that you show up consistently in different ways to different peoples in different situations, a person who cares, it builds your brand persona, I put it like that, as a person who cares. People know that. So if you approach John, say, John, if you want to have coffee, I'm up to it. John knows that you are a person who cares and that you are reaching out to him, whether he chooses to reach out to you or not is of his own making.
Mhm.
That's.
It reminds me of there was a gentleman that I worked with in one of my early jobs, a developer, and I tried so hard to try and get him to talk to me. And then I had someone explain to me the difference between extroverts and introverts, which I believe is a scale, but anyways, and how extroverts, which is how I would identify, we start the day with an empty box. And every time we have an interaction with another person, we get a coin that put in our box. And so the more we do that, the more we fill up our box in the day. And introverts they start the day with a box full of coins. And every day and every time they interact with somebody, a coin gets taken away. And so they defend a little bit differently than I welcome open arms. And so it was really interesting because I was like, oh, maybe I'm actually making him super uncomfortable by trying to have this kind of relationship with him. And he really doesn't want that. That's not me showing him that he belongs or he's like safe in his own experience. That's me trying to impress something onto him to create fake belonging. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. But I know, so we had this. The one thing I knew about him was that he loved chocolate covered almonds. And that was the one thing I could get out of him. Because you know when they used to have like the boxes that would come and they would just like give you all the chocolate almonds, and he would buy all of them. And so there was this one scenario where he had like a very difficult interaction with the CEO of the company. And so I just got him a little bag of chocolate covered almonds and left it on his desk. And I didn't say anything about it. I didn't say it was from me. I just put it there because I knew he could use it. And it was like he knew it was me. And I was like, oh, this is just nice. And there was like so many times we did this in office. There was this contest for Backstreet Boys tickets. Like the whole office could win Backstreet Boys tickets if you did this video of the whole office singing a Backstreet Boys song. And he would not do that, but he videoed all of us doing it. And I was just like, I will remember him and celebrate him always because he taught me so many things about what it looks like to create space for people to belong on their terms and not on my terms. And he's still one of my favorite people nowadays.
Yeah, I had a friend, like a Japanese friend, when I lived in the US, and she was very shy. She talked like very slow, and she didn't show up much emotions, many of her emotions, and things like this. And I am this person here, right, Trace? So I felt like I always like awkward. I felt like I was like on the wrong foot with her. Right? Like I was not respecting her or something. But then I received a letter months after we got back to our countries, and was one of the most beautiful letters I have ever received, because she was telling me how much she appreciated my company, how much she valued. And every time that I would, because I'm a touch person, right? As a Latin, I touch you, right? I try not to, but I like I touch you, right? And I love hugs. So okay, I love hugs, right? I like hugs, and and she felt like I felt like, oh my goodness, that I am hugging her again, like, and I thought that she hated, and I felt so bad about myself, when I could not see, and I was just like hugging her, and then she went on and on how important my hugs were for her, and she valued the way that I was, because I showed her affection, and I showed her other ways of being, and that made her feel good, that she could be differently, but she chose not to. But then was not because she was like in prison, that she had to be that culture background, because she felt good being that kind of person, but she only learned that by having lived with a person different from her. But she valued my affection and even my hugs, and the way that I was open and discussed openly about different things. And that was so beautiful, because I, I felt so bad over and over. I felt that I was not respecting her. But again, and this is the thing, right? A community of people that have their own identity. But sometimes when we worry too much about the other person, we ended up not showing up as we are. So, and then somehow we don't allow communities to really flourish, because we hold back to our energy, because we think that others will perceive us, I don't know, disrespectfully or something like that. So I think it's important, again, to have a long-term view of communities, because then you understand that, like waves, it comes and goes, and sometimes we are not in a good position. Sometimes we are awkward, the relationship kind of, I don't know, there's something, but that's okay, because there will be tomorrow. But if we value one another, there always will be a tomorrow, because we value our connection, and that help us to go through bad times, to go through conflict, because we know that it's not personal, we're not attacking one another, it's just a matter of different views, different cultural backgrounds, different ways of expressing yourselves. So there's something that it's off, but we will together clear that out.
Mhm. Ah, I think this is a beautiful spot to wrap up today, in that the value that we create is created by us showing up and caring the way we know how to do that. And just because someone else doesn't do that the same way does not mean that how we do that is valuable. And I think that that is another thing I will say all of you guys can take to the bank and celebrate about yourself, is how you show up and how you care about people is valuable. And thank you for doing that, because not everybody does that work on a day to day basis. Oh, Claudia, I feel like we could chat for a very long time about this, which is what we did the first time we met.
Yeah.
um, but I appreciate everybody in the comments as well. Lisa, Rosalind, Arslan, and Ronell, you guys had some amazing ads. So thank you so much for joining in the conversation today. If you guys don't already know Claudia, make sure she is she's linked in this post. So click on her name, connect with her, tell her how much you enjoyed the conversation. And if you guys don't already know me, although I think most of you know me, feel free to do the same. I would love to connect. I am here to create spaces for people to have the conversations that matter to them. We're doing the same thing at the Your Business Peeps community on an ongoing basis. So we are here to have these conversations, to give you guys spaces to practice, to learn, and just show that innate value that you have, and give you opportunities to care about other
And
people.
that's rare, Tracy, and thank a lot to you for that, because in this busy world sometimes what's the quality of the conversations we've been having? So this is great. Thanks a lot for having this precious moment here with you and with the people that are with us.
Oh, thank you so much. My pleasure. And with that, everybody, we will see you again next week. We're actually going to have two sessions next week, because the week after that is my birthday. So I'm not going to have one that week, but we're going to have two next week. So stay tuned for that. Some really great conversations about professional identities as well as personal branding that you guys don't want to miss. Hopefully you guys get in some conversations that matter to you. In the meantime, I would love to hear about it. And until next time, everybody, permission to do you.
Right.
My computer doesn't want to disconnect us. It wants to just have us keep going.
Energy.
It's thinking about it, but I don't know what it's going to do. It doesn't want to end, you guys. You guys want to hear more about this? I don't know. I don't know what to do. I'll say not yet. Don't end.
Whoa.
I don't know. Let me refresh.
Friday the 13th.
I guess so. Yeah, that's the one thing.
Friday the
It's gonna
13th.
make you guys listen to Tracy and Claudia for longer. Technical difficulties. I don't know. We're still live, and it doesn't want to end the broadcast.
Well, you
I
wanna
could just like close my internet browser. That'll probably do it, but I'm not actually sure.
I think maybe you should like turn it off the computer. That will do it.
That's what I'm gonna try and do. So if I abruptly blow something up, I apologize. But thanks everybody for
Tracy.
coming today.
Tracy, bye bye. Ciao, ciao.
Bye. Ciao.